Hi, all. I just wanted to take this opportunity to invite you all to a brand new podcast exclusively for notaries and business entrepreneurs. My name is Daniel C. Lewis, and the podcast is called the Notary Podcast with Daniel C. Lewis. It's exclusively for notaries and business entrepreneurs or anyone who want to enter the notary arena or become a notary entrepreneur or get different tips and success stories for notary entrepreneurs, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I've started this podcast for you. This is exclusively for you. And just wanted to give you some of the subjects that we'll be covering. Some of the subjects and topics that we'll be covering would be intro to the notary services, notary public versus notary publico, common notary misconceptions, notarizing different types of documents, notary laws and requirements, mobile notary services, electronic notarizations, also remote online notarizations, notary public ethics. I love that topic. We'll be covering different things that happen to notaries where they were. Got a summons and they were defendants on cases for notarizing a document or doing something in the process of being a notary uh, during an assignment, and somehow they got a summons to come to court. So we'll be talking about notary ethics, becoming a notary public, how to become a notary public, the future of notary services, notaries' errors, and how to resolve them. That's going to be with notary insurance. That's going to be a really good one. Notary business tips, notary success stories. I am a 21-year notary entrepreneur. I'll be, as far as going through my success stories, I even tell you some of my horror stories going into nudist camps. We're going into a notary assignment and the house got caught on fire while I was in the house. Um, People leaving their kids with me during the assignments because they have some type of emergency. I'll tell you all I'll give you all the good tips and what I did in those situations. Also on this podcast, we're going to have guest speakers, and we also going to have some special surprise guest speakers on this podcast. So I'm so excited for that. And when you see some of the surprise guest speakers, say, hopefully it'll blow you away. Or how did Daniel get those guys? And this podcast is going to be a little different. This is going to be an interactive podcast where you, the viewer or the listener, whether you're in your car, driving to an assignment, or you are just relaxing, listening to this podcast, just staying in the flow of being a notary entrepreneur, listening to this podcast, you can actually participate in this podcast by doing this. Going to a special website we've created called Buy Me a cup of coffee. That's right. Buy me a cup of coffee or buy me a coffee. It's called buymeacoffee.com/the notary podcast. That's buymeacoffee.com/the Notary Podcast. You can buy me a $5 cup of coffee, a $15 cup of coffee, or a $25 cup of coffee. That if you like the content, I want to highly recommend you do that. And if you buy me a $25 cup of coffee, I'll even give you a shout out on the podcast. If you have questions or you have a topic you want us to cover, definitely do that. And I'll give you a little shout out here on the podcast. I'm looking so forward to uh, serving you on this podcast. This podcast is for you, and you'll hear more information. Just make sure you subscribe. Looking forward to seeing all of you soon.